All right, people. Here we go. It's just me and Sherrod tonight. And we're going to try to keep it short, but there might be some people out there who want their pound of flesh. And if so, we'll hang on here and we'll take some comments and we'll talk. Want to first tell everybody again, show is brought to you by our pals over at Raycon. Go to buyraycon.com/garden, receive 20% off. These are earbuds, folks, your next purchase. But the big news here, obviously, Celtics blow a 19-point lead, lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers, 91-89. No Jaylen Brown, we know. Richardson out. We knew that going in. Al Horford, we'll talk about him a little bit later because we were starting to get worried he might be a little bit creaky with overuse. He looked a little tired and slow. Back issues, apparently, but that's not the story. The story is total system failure here, Sherrod. This was a game at the 2:23 mark of the third quarter. The Celtics had an 18-point lead. It was 19-point lead a minute and a half or so earlier. 74 points at that point. With 2.5 minutes to go in the third, they finished with 89. That's it. 15 the rest of the way. They didn't score the rest of that quarter. Scored 15 points the entire fourth. That's it.
Yeah. We can go through all the different issues and factors that kind of led them down this wormhole of woeful play. But to me, the alpha and omega of that conversation is Jason Tatum. He has to be better. I mean, I don't know if he's hurt or not, because we've seen him during times when he's, off the court, he's riding the bike and maybe there's some kind of physical issue going on, but regardless of whether he's hurt or not, he is not playing like a top 10 player. He is not playing like a guy who is leading an elite playoff contending team. I mean, no, Dennis Schroeder, bless his heart. I mean, without Dennis Schroeder, this team is probably looking at 3-4 wins at this point, looking like a legitimate lottery top 5 team. Schroeder has bailed them out on a couple of occasions. He had 28 points tonight. For the first time in his career, had back-to-back games with 28 or more points, which, again, back to Tatum, he has to be better than this. I can embrace the fact that he's hurt. If he's got some kind of physical issue, then that at least I can comprehend what I'm seeing. But short of that, this doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It's hard to, you don't want to comment because you don't know if there's something there, right. But it's the shooting is unfathomably bad, but it's everything. It's bad decision making, sloppiness. Him down the stretch in the fourth there with throwing balls away and just taking long contested twos and just everything you don't want. And yes, he had a couple of buckets late, and when they needed them, he obviously had the one that tied the game there, which you want to see. But he was all out of sorts, all over the place, and the shot is nothing makes sense about it here at all. He looks slow. He can't turn the corner on anybody. And again, if he's hurt, or if there's something bugging him, fine, that might explain some. Might also explain the fact that I don't know if he looks a step slower to you, or people have figured out that he's not strong enough to finish around the rim, and he doesn't have a quick enough first step to get by you, and they just know he's playing you for that step back, and that's basically his game right now. And they're just all really contested shots. Before, he would get some separation on those because people would have to respect that he might do something. Now, you saw, to go back a night, I know they have some familiarity, but you looked at the one on the baseline with Semi Ojeleye guarding him. Semi's like, yeah, I've seen this 1,000 times before. I know what you're doing, and I know you're going over there. And Semi was waiting for him when he shot it. So I don't know if he's just become predictable. I know there's issues with the double teams, and when Jaylen Brown is out, it's tough. He's seeing guys coming at him. It's never really easy for him, but even makeable shots he doesn't make. He's just not making enough shots.
Yeah, when he, near the end of the game there, where there was that Cavaliers thought it was an offensive foul against Tatum, but he was just left wide open. I did not feel good about him taking that shot. Even though it was wide open. It was the best look he had all game, and I felt uncomfortably uncomfortable when I shouldn't be. You should never feel uncomfortable when the best player on the team has a wide open shot in a pressure situation. Tatum, it just doesn't make sense how what we've seen up until this point, the body of work that he's put together that brings us to this point, for him to be playing like this. I mean, Jaylen Brown can't get back soon enough. I mean, you knew Jaylen Brown had value, but damn, when Tatum has been out, we have not seen Jaylen Brown struggle like this, and so maybe he needs to have that 1A or 1B, depending on how you want to look at JB, out there in order to be effective. I don't know, because at this, I'm like most people. I can't make sense of what the hell I'm seeing out there from Jason Tatum right now.
I can't at all. And just these, the problem with it is, you'd like to see him on these, if a guy's working through shooting issues, you'd like to see him kind of take a step back and work and contribute in other ways.
Right.
He's not really doing that either. I think he's a guy who just thinks shooters got to shoot and I got to shoot my way out of problems. So, I mean, again, he's averaging 20 something field goal attempts a game. I mean, he's top 5 in the league in field goals jacked. And I mean, he's shooting 37% this month coming into this game. He's sub 40 for the season. He's, a little better from 3 lately. But he's just been bad. I mean, 8 for 22 tonight, 10 for 25. The game before, 8 for 24 before that. He had that one get right game where he was 12 for 19. But other than that, 3 for 13, 4 for 16, 8 for 22. You remove that Dallas game, and his numbers this month are putrid, Sherrod.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah, and tonight was particularly painful because, even when he shot the ball poorly, he's been able to do a pretty good job on the boards and not really cough the ball up a lot. And that was not the case. Not only did he shoot like crap, 8 for 22, he only had 4 rebounds and he had 6 turnovers. I mean, he had a Dennis Schroeder-like night when it comes to turnovers. You can't have that. That's just not Jason Tatum being his best version of himself. He's one of those guys that, again, when he's struggling to shoot the ball, he has to figure out ways to impact the game in other areas. And tonight, really, this was just an across-the-board bad game for him. Defense wasn't very good. Shot making, obviously, it is what it is. Missed 7 out of his 8 threes. Didn't do a good job on the glass. Had a couple of assists, but 6 turnovers. No steals, no blocks. This was definitely not a good night for Tatum.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's the frustration is there after. I mean, he's always been a body language guy. The frustration is there after everything. You see him shoot, miss, and slump. And you see him shoot and make, and he's like, ugh, finally. Like, every shot is in his head right now. It's so strange for him because this is a guy who's been a pure scorer his entire life, and he's completely in his own head, and he's just trying to force the issue. There's so many like ball stopping moments, where he's just getting the ball and he's just doing that thing, and he's just kind of trying to burrow his way to a spot to get his shot, and it's just not working for him right now. I tweeted something I would have thought would be unfathomable. Because how many times have we railed on like late in the game, the ball's got to go through Tatum or Brown. I don't know why they're messing around with all this other stuff. Why Marcus and Grant got late shots last year. It drove us crazy. I want to see him touch the ball less right now. I do not want to see the offense run through Tatum. I want to see the ball swung to him at a time where he can do something quick and aggressive. I don't want to see him getting the ball and controlling the offense right now because it's a mess when he has the ball in his hands. He just slows things down, settles for his jumpers or is slow to pass out of double teams and just kills the flow of whatever flow of the offense. There wasn't much going tonight offensively. What I will say is, to not put it all on Tatum, there was one, this was still, even though Tatum was struggling the entire game, a game that they had under control. This was a war of attrition game. The Celtics ran out lineups tonight, Sherrod, twice of Pritchard, Romeo, Nesmith, Grant, and Parker. Twice. They got away with it in the first quarter because Cleveland ice cold. Okay. Those guys were actually a plus. They extended the lead, believe it or not, in that first quarter, and they came in. But Udoka tried it again in the third. And again, I was pretty nervous when that happened. I was like, this doesn't feel like the right. They had to do it, but that wholesale change just felt, dubious. I just didn't feel great about it. And it kind of went away there. I said, you got away with it once. I don't know that it was a good idea to get away with it again. Grant, despite the fact that he hit 3 threes, was atrocious all night. He was a liability most of the night. Parker too, brutally bad. Pritchard, brutally bad in his minutes. You got some contributions from Romeo. Nesmith, again, kind of a non-factor. I mean, that whole bench unit, and again, Grant started, so technically not a bench guy, but that whole bench unit was just bad.
Yeah. And this was a game where, again, just looking at the way this Cavaliers roster is constructed, you could totally envision a guy like Josh Richardson coming in and giving you like 8 or 10 points. When you look at the fact that the way that Marcus Smart was really trying to go at, the smaller guard, Josh Richardson, I think, would have had a little bit more success with that. Their bench is what it is. I mean, this is why every single player who's out with an injury or an illness or a sickness, it's not just having to replace that player. It's having to replace that player and the role that the player who's replacing them is going to leave vacant. And they don't have the kind of quality depth to just fill in the gaps like that. I mean, when you lose Josh Richardson, that means Nesmith and Pritchard are going to move up in the pecking order. But if they're not in a good flow or good rhythm, and they can't seem to get into a good flow or good rhythm on their own, they're going to struggle. You're missing Al Horford. That means you might see it, Hernan Gomez sighting, which we did. That means you're probably going to see Jabari Parker, which we did. That's not a good thing most times when you have to put those guys in the first half of games. This team has a very razor-thin margin for error, illness, and sickness, and we're seeing that every now and then they can catch a break and win, but for the most part, they're going to struggle when they're missing guys. And we look at the Milwaukee game and how awesome it was. They beat the defending champs. They beat the defending champs who were without 3 of their top 4 players, and they had to do it in overtime at home. So it's great that they won that game, but when you start looking at some of the factors that kind of lean the scale in their favor, that should have been an overtime game. That should have been a 5-10 point win for most good teams.
Yeah, that was. I'd say last night's postgame was one of the roughest ones I remember, because there was almost nothing to say about the game. The game was garbage. It was a flat performance, and Schroeder saved your butts, and that was it. But that game was garbage. It was uninspired. There's a couple positives here and there that sprung up, but a really, really flat game. And Schroeder played out of his mind, and that's why you won that. Otherwise, that would have been a brutal loss to a really undermanned team. Cleveland's playing pretty well, but they're down players too here. It's like you can't use the injury card. The Celtics are woefully thin. Just it's a thin team. And you were hoping this year would be the year that you could get stuff out of consistency and work guys like Nesmith and Romeo into, and Romeo has worked his way into the rotation where he provides value. He's not consistent on a night in, night out basis, but he's playable because he grabbed some good boards tonight. He played some really good defense. He did a couple of good things. He's a little hurried on his offense, and he's not aggressive enough. Sometimes he's got to attack with the idea that I'm going to the cup. I think he gets into the lane thinking, where am I going to get rid of this ball sometimes? Or he rushes his shots. He's got to play with a little bit more purpose sometimes on the offensive end, but he's playable simply because of what he can do on defense. But none of these other guys are at all. And so back to where you were last year, whether it's Tatum out, Brown out, Smart, who missed a chunk of time, Kemba, who played erratically, every time they were down a guy or two, as soon as you get into that bench, this stuff like this would happen. It's really not sustainable. Their starting lineup's not good enough to build 25-point leads over people and then let the bench, let it eat into it. So it can't be this bad. They can't have this few contributions from the people coming off the bench.
No, they can't. And
regressions, I think, for Nesmith and Pritchard. I think Parker's basically unplayable. I think Grant is not any better this year either. I don't know where you go here.
Well, I think for Ime, I think he's going to have to become a bit more of a micromanager of this team. I think going forward, because right now they're still trying to figure out what their identity as a team is. But if you had to look at what it's been through the course of the season up to this point, it's a team that can beat anyone on any given day. But more times than not, if they get a big lead, they're going to choke it away. He's got to do a better job of managing the success that they're having in games. I think part of it is going to be he's going to have to frankly get out of his comfort zone and not call timeouts when you traditionally call timeouts. Like if you get a 19-point lead and then in about 90 seconds it's down to 14 or 12, call that timeout before it gets any further. He's got to figure out he's got to get a better pulse on when he needs to throw the life preserver for this team and save them from themselves and just stop play and calm their asses down or get their focus back where it needs to be. Because right now, he's doing what a lot of coaches tend to do, and that is let your players play, let them figure it out. And while I think that there's value in that, at some point, you just got to say, they ain't going to figure it out tonight. I need to help them. This is where I have to be, the hard ass and say, guys, get your asses over here. You're not focused. I didn't want to call this timeout, 90 seconds in, but we got to do it. When Rick Carlisle was one of the best coaches of doing that because he knew there were a couple teams he had in Detroit that were horseshit teams, and he knew that. He micromanaged the hell out of those guys. Whenever they would get like a 7-point lead and it got down to 4, he's calling a quick timeout. And you're wondering, why is he doing that? Because he understands that his role has to be, he has to cater his role to the needs of his team at that moment. Yeah. And I think Ime is still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like.
He did at one point in the third that weird sequence where Schroeder hit the deck and stayed on the floor for like 35 seconds, and Marcus is looking back at him like, dude, what are you doing? Like, is this theatrics or are you hurt? They played 4-on-5. Tatum ended up taking a long 2 on that possession. Schroeder finally eventually walks up. The next time he gets the ball, he does some weird, just give me the ball, angry sort of, ISO move, pull up, contested jumper. And Ime is like, nope, timeout, like on the next bucket there. Like something went awry on that sequence, and I evil Dennis kind of creeped in. I'm not really sure, I think, that'll happen from time to time. So he did stop it there, but it's that late third quarter there where it just looked like, I don't know, use all your, if you want to give your guys a rest, just call timeout after timeout after timeout and then get them back in the game there and stop the bleeding. And then they came back in the quarter with the same unit with just Schroeder subbed in, I think, for maybe Grant. I can't remember. And the rest of the guys were out there. I was like, what are we doing here? And it got away there. So it's a tough one. You can't play your starters. It's like in baseball. Your best pitchers can't pitch every friggin' game or every friggin' inning. Sometimes you got to go to the back end of your bullpen and stuff gets away from you. This was a back end of the bullpen sort of game, and they blew the lead there before you could plug the leak.
Yeah. One of the big disappointments for me has been how some of those young guys aren't making the most of their opportunities. Peyton Pritchard, I think it's pretty clear he's not going to play every game. So when he does play, he needs to give Ime a reason to play him more, and he's not. And that for me has been disappointing because I looking at what he was able to do in the summer, looking at some of the things he did last season, you felt optimistic that there's levels to his game that he is trending towards reaching because he works so damn hard, and he seems like a just the type of player that would make the most of his opportunities, but he's not shooting the ball well. His playmaking feels like it's regressed from where it was last year. And, defensively, he's going to have his issues and his challenges simply for just a matter of physics. I mean, he's physically not able to defend as well as you would ideally want him to. But the playmaking, the shot making, that's been the big disappointment with him. And same thing with Nesmith. Both of those guys, you look at them as players that you've tried to develop over the last year and some change so that they would get to the point where when they had an opportunity, they would not crap in the pants, and that's just not happening. I got to go there, John, because we're talking about the kiddies, and that's what kiddies.
I agree. That's the problem. That's the thing, and I catch some flack for it in the comments, but Nesmith is a basket case, okay? And every time I'm critical of him, everyone's like, he's young. There's a lot of young people who are way more poised and doing better things on a, on a semi-regular basis. He's all over the place. So he's got to do one thing to keep him on the court. Last year, it was effort and energy, and that was enough to give him a shot. But that was a bit of a reward. Not necessarily you make us better, but you're working, you're trying. I'm going to give you a shot. The guy has to settle down, get to spots, and get some shots off, and they have to go down. If he's not a shooter, he's useless. Pritchard's kind of in the same boat. If he's not able to get into the lane and dish or create, I mean, he got in there once and friggin' Mobley blocked it with his elbow, that you can't do that, man. It's a friggin' pros. Like, you got to know that's not going to work for you. Or just he's got to get that shot off. And I don't know. Did he start the game with the face mask and took it off in the second half?
I can't remember.
I think he took it off. Anyway, but you're going to get to the point where you got to wonder, like, I don't know, because we don't see enough of practice when we go to them, what kind of shooter Nesmith is. Didn't we just find out he just broke a record?
He broke like a Tatum record for like consecutive threes or something like that, which again, it's great to talk about that, but I think back to a conversation I had many, many years ago with Rasheed Wallace, who was talking about how amazing Darko Milicic was in practice. But then she would end by saying, but it's a completely different game when you're playing the game. When the lights come on, not everybody can perform when the lights come on.
No doubt. Yeah. But it's at least it's there. Like, I think right. the worry with Nesmith for some people out there is, you got rooked there. It was a bill of false goods, because the sample size was so small, because he had that shortened season in his last year at Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Yep.
I almost said Tennessee. That was Grant. That was his last season there. And so I think he only took like 45 threes and he made 20 of them or whatever. And it was like, oh, he shot 50% for the year. That's a really big number, which is great, but it was a small sample size. So I think there was concern with, like, did we just get duped over this really, really small sample size? And he's not nearly the shooter that we think he is. And so I like hearing that in practice he lights it up and can do that, because it means that's a thing he could theoretically do if he was able to slow the game down and figure out where the hell he's supposed to be standing and get the shot off with some sort of rhythm. Every release he has in a game looks different to me. Nothing looks smooth. And when he misses by a lot. I mean, it's like,
which is unusual.
It's not a good looking stroke in the game.
Right. For a guy who is supposed to be kind of like a long range, sniper type, those guys typically, when they miss, they don't miss by much.
Yeah.
It's usually like, maybe it's hit the back of the rim, or it's the front of the rim.
He's off left, he's off right, he's all over the place.
I mean, he's missing rim altogether, which is something again, snipers typically, that doesn't happen. They gotta, the fact that they're in the 500-ish conversation is a positive, because there was a time just a couple weeks ago we weren't even sure if they could be a 500 team. So overall, they're definitely, I think, better than they were from when you look at the start of the season. But those role players have to be better, and we've talked about that before, about how the guys who are not named Tatum and Brown have to emerge. And your guy Rob, I thought, had a good game tonight.
No question. And that's the thing, is like, you want to check it's hard after a game like this to check the plus column for too many things. But Rob, again, Schroeder again for what he did and what he does. And he played a pretty clean first half with only one turnover, and then the turnovers kind of came in late. But again, that's what you're going to get with him. Again, his ability to create offense, especially at a time where nothing else is working. I mean, that stretch that he had in the second quarter, that kind of like that gave them their lead, where he's like, all right, I'm just going to score a ton now. And when nothing was really going for Tatum. So, I mean, he basically, they built the lead on his shoulders there. And then just really nobody else could get anything going offensively. The second unit, Tatum the whole time. But Rob consistently just keeps making things happen. He's not getting, he doesn't have a refined offensive game. I talked about his touches. I wish they'd work it into his hands a little bit more because I think he makes good decisions with the ball. But even just kind of being a piece there and just looking for his opportunities, he just always finds them. He's got active hands. He's constantly keeping balls alive if he's not grabbing the rebounds himself. 16 boards, but how many tips that he kept balls alive that other people ended up with, which gave them second chance opportunities. His hands in the passing lanes, everything. He's just makes good things happen. And you're seeing more of the last year version of Rob now. I'm still missing about 20% of like freakish athleticism, which I don't know if that's a choice or is just he's still playing his way into shape. But he looks active and quicker now. He's moving better, way better than he did at the beginning of the year. So he's a huge plus right now. The fact that they didn't get murdered on the boards in this game, with that double big lineup over there, that's a credit to to him. And I mean, Tatum, I thought, was good on the boards. Marcus, it was a decent team effort, but Rob was great.
Yeah, I mean, not only did they not get murdered on the boards, they won the board.
They won the board battle. I didn't see the final total, but they were winning. I saw most of the game.
Yeah, and that's really surprising. But again, I think a lot of that has to do with Rob Williams and his activity around the glass. And I asked him about this about a week or so ago about just, are we seeing, him basically being more of a thinker out there than just relying on his athleticism? He said, absolutely. That, one of the reasons why we're not seeing as many of those kind of highlight real quality plays from Rob is because he's basically thinking the game more, realizing that he doesn't have to, jump for every single shot attempt at the glass in order to be a factor. He's a smarter player now than he was last year. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not as worried about his athleticism now as I was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, because he's showing enough in games to where I don't feel as though it's not there. He's giving me just enough to remind me that, I'm maybe 6'8", 6'9", but I play like I'm 7'1". Yeah. And that I'm okay with that. But I need the guys around him to play better. And then I think the guys around him need to better utilize what he does well. He can run the floor. We know that. He can finish around the basket, but he's also a really good passer. And there's just a part of me that believes as we get deeper into the season, they're going to explore that more. And we're going to see
plays for the guy. Run some plays for the guy.
Well, this is the funny thing. And when I was in Detroit, that's exactly what they did for Ben Wallace. Yeah. They ran the first play damn near every game for him. And that was all the fuel he needed to just kick ass at the other end of the floor. And Rob has been a good soldier about all this and just, he's not complaining or asking for any touches, but it'd be kind of nice if they decided to just, I don't know, make the first play a Rob Williams down low, put him at the elbow and just let him operate and navigate.
No, I'd like to see it. I love the activity. I like the minutes. I like that he's talking. You see him way more communicative and verbal on the court, telling people things. There was one exchange, I know, and again, I wasn't sure what it was, but it was on a Schroeder play. And, he got in his ear and he was basically saying, like, you should have done this. And Schroeder's like, and he's like, and he called him right out on it, and like, that's something he wouldn't have done before. And it wasn't like a bad thing. He's just kind of like, yo,
Yeah, right. Because like late in the game where there's a situation where it involved Robert, it involved Schroeder, and it involved Marcus Smart. And it was a play where Rubio threw the lob and Marcus was attached to the guy on the post, which made sense. And
and he just pointed to Rob and then he looked away.
Right. And but Rob was hedging on the guy that was wide open, and then Schroeder was just kind of like, in no man's land, and he didn't realize or recognize that he should have at least put a body on the guy that was literally right behind him who caught the lob. Yep. Little things like that they have to get better at. But to your point, John, I do like the fact that Rob is not only recognizing the bullshit when it's out there, but he's actually speaking up and saying, guys, you know what? We need to be better, and this is why we need to be better. We can't let that happen. So he is he's becoming a player that so many people thought he could be. He's starting to play and think like a top 5, top 10 draft pick would think at this point in their career. He's not there yet, but you can tell that the wheels are turning in that direction.
Yeah. Again, that was my my big hopes for this season was Rob entering, all-star conversation might be a little much, but entering a place where, I thought he was clearly the third best player on the team last year, but it was just limited minutes, limited opportunities. And this year, to solidify yourself is kind of, like I said, bridging that gap in talent between the top two guys and the rest of the roster, having a guy out there who's a difference maker. You need another one. And what's interesting is Rob's a difference maker, and Schroeder, to an extent, is. He's a flawed player, but he is a difference maker for this team right now, which they need when Jalen is out, because you need somebody who can make things happen. No one else out there is making things happen when your best player, Tatum, is playing like I don't even know what right now. I mean, all-star voting is today. Tatum doesn't make the fifth team. He's not himself right now. He is not having a good year. So you really hope that he turns it around. So yeah, you need stuff like this. I guess some good news. Jaylen Brown talked to our pal Abby, prior to the game, and said Monday is possible, which is definitely on the early side of what we would have thought here for return. So he can't get back. He can't get back soon enough. I want to talk a little bit more about this game. And again, we did say we're going to keep it short, but I did want to just remind people, since I have you here, our sponsor, Raycon Earbuds, seamless Bluetooth pairing, comfortable noise isolating fit. So make sure you head out and get some. You can put it into pure mode, balance mode, bass mode, listen to your music in a bunch of different ways. 8 hours of playtime, 32 hours battery life, built-in mic. You can take your calls on it. Perfect gift for the holiday season. Everybody needs these wireless earbuds, or just for yourself. If you don't have them, grab a pair. As good as some of the premium brands, but half the price. And it's no question about that. So go out, check them out. It's Raycon, RAYCON.com/garden. Go there to unlock an exclusive deal just to our listeners here at the Garden Report, 20% off your Raycon order. This is a very limited time, and honestly, I think it's running out this weekend. So please check it out. 20% off your Raycon order. Buy Raycon.com/garden. 20% off your purchase. Buy a bunch of them. If you're getting 20% off, get it off on all of them. Back to this game again tonight. We've kind of exhausted a little bit of the good and the bad here. Other things you were watching tonight that stuck out to you in any way? And I guess I wanted to kind of go a little bit back to the bench, because, what is it about? Go ahead. You tell me what you're thinking. I have one other thing I wanted to follow up with you on.
No, the bench is an issue, but it's an issue that is really prominent in games like this, where you're playing a back-to-back, where you're going to have to dig a little deeper into that second unit and lean on them to give you some juice. And when you're missing a guy from that group like Richardson, and then you have to move up a guy like Schroeder into the starting lineup, it's a double whammy for that second unit to be impactful. But again, I expected better from Peyton Pritchard at this point in the season. I expected better from Aaron Nesmith at this point in the season. And again, those guys aren't going to get a ton of opportunities, but then you ask yourself, well, why is that? Well, nights like this, that's why. They're not being as productive or effective as they can be.
That's what I wanted to hit you with. We were kind of kicking this around because, Jimmy and Bob even more so, Pritchard guys, or at least think that he's capable of stuff. Bobby had super high hopes for him. I think was saying that, they should even consider
pick and roll shooter or something like that. And
I don't want to talk about, he can't defend himself here, but he had like starter aspirations for Pritchard in year two. And Jimmy likes his game a lot. And we've kind of kicking around like, what's worse about him this year? He looks different. He was able to make plays last year and do a lot more, and he's not able to do it at all this year. And again, I think that face mask is certainly no joke. I think limited minutes and ability to not get in, a groove is also an issue. But I don't know. Does he look slower to you? Does it look? He just something's off with him. I can't figure it out.
The biggest thing I've noticed with him is just impact. I mean, that was the one thing that even last year when he came in there, he didn't always score a bunch of points or make a lot of assists.
But his presence was
exactly. He had a presence that was a positive when he was on the floor. You didn't need to go to analytics.
He was a spark plug.
Yeah.
We called him Sparky.
I mean, that's what you expected from him. And
Jimmy
you
loves a sparky little guy. Yeah.
which is why I know Jimmy likes him. They got that whole, little man thing going on there. But
Yeah.
which
They're both sparky guys.
exactly. But the thing about him now is there's no spark, there's no sizzle, there's just nothingness when he comes in there now. He's not making shots, he's not getting guys as involved as I think he has the talent to do. And he goes back to that word, the P word, presence. He doesn't really have one when he's out there. Tonight he played, what was it, like 8-9 minutes? 15 minutes. Missed all his shots, had a couple rebounds, couple assists, couple turnovers. When you say, well, Marcus Smart missed all his shots too, which is true. But Marcus had 8 assists and 5 steals.
He came out with 6 and 3 in the first half. So again, not cooled down a little from that perspective, but Marcus threw some really great passes in the first half.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's and again, that's where Pritchard, I think he's got to get back to being that guy that has a presence out there. It doesn't mean you make every shot, doesn't make you, rack up 10 assists in 8 minutes, but make your presence felt. And because we've seen him do that. I think that's one of the frustrations with him and a lot of Celtics fans. We're not asking him to do anything we haven't seen him do before. For whatever reason, it's just not happening. But he's got to get back to being that guy. He really does if he's going to help this team this year.
Yeah. So Jalen comes back. You're shortening and again, Ime was playing with a short bench. To start anyway. So I really don't think, when they finally settle in, if it's that double big lineup with Schroeder, Richardson coming off the bench, Romeo playing a few minutes there, I think that's about as deep as they want to go. I think it's going to be an 8-9 man rotation. So again, you're right. It's not as big an issue. You're missing 3 guys who are playing significant minutes in a game, but the drop off is just so gross. I mean, it's so depressing because the key to this team upping its level is getting better from within. Very well, and that's what's kind of depressing about it. What you got in Horford, Richardson, Schroeder, to an extent, you're the players that you have, in your starting lineup, you kind of know who they are. You want to see, your stars kind of keep ticking up and kicking it up a level, but you pretty much know where they're going to be. The only way that this team was going to surprise you is if you all of a sudden got a big growth out of, Pritchard, Romeo, Grant, Nesmith. It's still early. I think you got something out of Romeo. I don't know that you're going to get anything out of these guys this year. And I don't know if ever. I hate to call it, this early in their careers, but you're certainly not getting it this year. It doesn't feel like, which means the ceiling feels a little capped on this team. It just kind of is what it is, which is tough to a tough pill to swallow 13 games into a year.
Yeah, I'm still feeling good about Romeo going forward.
I am too.
I think of the guys that we're talking about on that bench, I still think that Romeo's that one guy that could be an X factor. For example, I think if this team gets into the playoffs, it would not surprise me if Romeo helps them win a game that they would not have won without his contributions. I think he has that type of difference making capability. And that doesn't mean he's going to go off for 20. It doesn't mean he's going to grab 10 rebounds, but his ability to defend is going to get him opportunities to make an impact. And again, he's figuring out different ways to get points. We talk a lot about that corner 3, but tonight we saw him put it on the floor, lower his shoulder and score in the paint. That's something we don't see Romeo do very often. So he's a guy that it seems the more he plays, the more he's showing us that he belongs out there.
It's again, I want to see him, like I said earlier, I want to see him when he decides he's going to go. I still think he's half in, half out sometimes,
Yeah.
I think he gets close to the rim and he's like, oh shit, am I shooting this? Let's do it. Let's go for it. Instead of going with a little bit more purpose and ferocity or just knowing that he's going to get there. He's going to finesse it. He's going to draw some contact. Because that's what I've always thought. I thought he could be a good tweener scorer. I've always thought I hate saying poor man's Markelle Fultz because he's a pretty incomplete player, but a guy who could kind of get to his spots and score creatively. I think he's kind of getting halfway and not all the way and not finishing the way he necessarily could. The 3-point shooting is a revelation so far this year. So again, that alone 3-and-D stuff keeps him in the game.
Yeah.
I do think there's another potential level for him. It's just not. It's not all there. The other guys, I'm much more concerned. I'm deeply concerned. Yes, I gave up the stock. I got it, Vinny. I know. I gave it up last. I was the biggest Romeo apologist for those guys killed me all year. They killed me all year for doing it, for having my blind faith in Romeo will save us. They're like, dude, shut up. So I don't really know about the rest. I guess I'll ask this question, and we'll wrap it up a little bit early tonight. What, above all else, what does this team need? Whether it's something from the outside, or what does it need to do that it's not doing?
I think that depends on just what the end goal is for this team this year. Like, I think for them, realistically, getting to the second round of the playoffs, I think, would be a successful season for this team. So do they have the pieces in place right now? Can they get that done with the group they have now? And I would say, yeah, they can. But this group has to stay healthy, which I don't think they will. So that being said, they're either going to have to go outside, or they're going to have someone just – what I was hoping would happen with this team was that a Romeo, a Neesmith would develop into a double-digit scorer. If one of those young guys became a 10-point-per-game scorer, now all of a sudden, that when you average like 10 points a game, that means on any given night you can drop 20 or 25. They don't have anyone, frankly, outside of maybe the top 4 guys who can do that. And that's a problem. That's a problem, because if there feels as though there's a cap on how talented that next line of talent is on this team. We know what Tatum and Brown and Horford can do. We know what Rob Williams can do, but we don't know how much bandwidth is there in Romeo's growth, and which I think there's quite a bit, in Neesmith's growth, in Payne's growth. So I think they're going to have to look outside if they want to feel comfortable and confident that they can go into the playoffs and they can move beyond just being a team that shows up for the postseason.
That's it.
Yep.
But yeah, a lot of people here talking about a playmaker, dying for a point guard to come in here.
See, I'm not sold on that's necessarily what they need. It would be nice if you had that. Like Ricky Rubio, his play was great for them, just great. But more than that, you need what we've been talking about before. You need a guy who can make their presence felt. Like, if Jabari Parker could actually, finish the way he wants to finish.
Okay, you can't. No,
you can't count. I know you can't count him. I know, John. I know.
I
still have Jabari Parker stock, and I can't.
I agree with Fuzzy here.
The reason why.
This is what I've said this last year, and I'll said this at the beginning of this year. The key to the Celtics being a contender is these two guys being top 15 players. And we say it every year. We use that top 100 list as a launching point and say, okay, they're here this year. If they tick up. So again, if Tatum's 14 before the year and Jaylen Brown is 25, if they're 8 and 15 at the end of the year, theoretically, again, just let's whatever, in the world where people vote on lists, we know those things aren't absolute, but right. If Tatum is a clear second team All NBA, Jaylen's a clear third All NBA, or vice versa, that's a different story. That's how you get there. You can't have Tatum regressing and Jaylen missing a ton of games. I agree 100%. These guys, the only way they get there is these guys need to up their level and be assassins and just winning games on their own. You can't have games where these guys play okay or play crappy and you need everyone else to bail you out. I mean, Tatum's had 2 good games this year. I mean, that's just not good enough for your best player. It really isn't.
No. And I think he knows that he has to play better, but I think he's still trying to figure out what the hell does that really look like? I mean, he's hearing in one ear that I need to be more of a playmaker, and you're hearing in another ear that I need to be more efficient. And to me, it's all the above. Everything that people have told you need to get better at, you need to do, because you're the best freaking player on the team. That's your job.
Yeah.
That's literally your job, to be the best at anything and everything. Yes, it's great when other guys can help. That's always a good thing.
But it's on these guys.
Them because you're the best player, and you need to play like the best player.
Yeah. And again, in the simplest way, and I tweeted this during the game, Tatum just needs to take more shots going towards the basket rather than moving away from it. It seems simple, but just take some better shots. Yes, they've got some bench problems. Yes, they have playmaking problems. And Ime still figuring things out. At the end of the day, overall effort is up, I believe.
Yeah.
So again, you're going to look at a positive thing. Effort is up. Defensive intensity and effort is up. There's still some communications issues and some holes here, but they're not getting lit up like they were before. They're playing a lot better. So you think that if they can, and again, Scal said this during the game, if you can keep it tight, you just got to find a way to manufacture enough points to win these games. You don't have to be in the 120s every single night if you're playing, committed and decent defense, which just means you need Jalen back and you need Jason to get his head out of his, whatever, and get better. Brown getting injured, as frequently as he has is a bit of a concern too, but we'll see. He could be back Monday. I think Sherrod's off Monday, but we will have the rest of the gang here. So we will be back as two teams play again back in Cleveland. I do want to mention one last time, raycon.com/garden, our sponsor, 20% off your next purchase. Anybody out there who is a fan of football, and I know we all are, it is a Cleveland sort of weekend, is it not?
Yes.
It is a Cleveland sort of weekend. And so tomorrow we will have Patriots postgame show as well for anybody out there who wants to check that out. Evan Lazar will be down in Foxborough hanging out because that's what Evan Lazar does. And he will be filing reports. And then we are going to jump on and we're going to do a Patriots postgame show after the game. So if you haven't already, subscribe to Patriots Press Pass on YouTube and join us for the postgame show. It's a good time had by all. Predictions for tomorrow's game, for this game, Sherrod?
Yeah, they'll bounce back. They'll beat Cleveland. It'll be a fairly close game, but they'll find a way to win. Hopefully, it will not go to overtime.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the Celtics will win tomorrow. Yeah, or one day. Yeah, I expect them to win.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So we'll get that. If we go 2 out of 3 against Cleveland this weekend, that'll be pretty good.
That will be very good.
Yeah,
we'll take
it. Yeah. So check that out, and obviously subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you're just here joining us, hanging out. Give us some likes, hit the subscribe button, do whatever. Support CLNS programming. We would appreciate it. Until Monday, for Sherrod, I am John Zannis. We will see you guys later. Thanks, guys.